So thank you everybody for joining us in Grid Racing today. And I have a very interesting participant in the stage. It's Jack Winthinshaw, part of my pronunciation.
That's all
Uh,
right.
yeah, we're really excited and thrilled with this type of interview because, guys, you are one of the innovators on the electrification here with this new product. And I don't know if you know, but DHL is also working and investing on these type of technologies as well with our fixed wing aircraft. So, but I don't want to talk about DHL. I just want to say thank you for joining us. And we're truly excited to understand more about Airspeeder. So could you make us a quick intro about what Airspeeder is and how you guys working on today in the product?
Yeah, absolutely. Juan, thank you for having us, and hope everyone's having a good time out there. Absolutely. So, Airspeeder in a nutshell is the Formula One of the skies. It's a flying race car series. It is bringing electric motorsports into the sky. Now, we came up with this idea probably back in 2016. Our founder, a guy called Matt Pearson, serial entrepreneur. He's always dreamed about flying cars, and who hasn't? We've always thought flying cars would happen in our lifetime. Star Wars, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Back to the Future. But it's only recently that we've been able to see kind of the convergence of electric vehicles and the development of powertrains start to meet with the kind of industrialization and the scale up of drone technology to be able to converge into a place where flying cars are possible. For us, we took a bit of a different approach. If you look out in the market at the moment, there's 500 flying car companies out there, which is brilliant. It's also fantastic to see big names from the automotive industry start to pile in and make that dream a reality. But for us, we're believing that we're born to the belief that that competition, nothing like competition, can drive innovation. And we've seen that already in the automotive world. We've seen it in the aviation world. And we think for this flying car revolution that it's going to be the same again. And that's Airspeeder.
Cool. Jack, tell me a little bit more about that because when you read news about Uber trying to uplift passenger stuff, and everybody understands this type of racing and platforms like a platform to test technologies. And this is one of the most exciting things when DHL wants to sponsor and partner with people in companies like you. Uh, Tell me a little bit more about what are those technologies that you guys are developing and the challenges that you have encountered lately.
Yeah, I think racing always has a special place in the any sort of mobility revolution, really. But what we've realized is for Airspeeder, we specialize in three distinct areas. And now one is performance. We're always used to that, where you are able to push it to the extreme with extreme personalities in extreme settings. So you're going to get some great results that do trickle down to the mainstream market, like you've seen in traditional motorsports. But the other side we also are really hotly focused on is safety. So when you have these vehicles going at insane paces with brilliant drivers, we want to be able to push them to their limits, but do so safely and understand in a benign environment like racing how these different technologies can keep these pilots safe and how that technologies can trickle out into the mainstream market again. So we're not just talking about things inside the vehicle. We can talk about how like our close collision avoidance technology. So how our vehicles are all in the air at the exact same time without physically touching each other. A technology that obviously has results where we can take it to the mainstream market. And then finally, the third one is around awareness. We believe that one day we're all going to have flying cars over our cities in the next 10 years or so. However, before then, we want people to fall in love with them. And we think racing does that really well. It shows off the technology. It shows off some of the people that are connected to this technology, gains their trust, gains their acceptance, which is the previous step we need before we get adoption. So, yeah, I think it's more than just a place and a space for technology to be able to be pushed. It's a real starting spot for any mobility revolution.
Interesting. So performance, safety, and awareness. Let me deep dive a little bit more about performance because when you try to understand the technicalities behind this, you wanted to know you want to understand the performance. A little bit more details related to how many nautical miles, what's the speed, how much weight you can carry. Can you tell me more about that? James?
Yeah, I can tell you a bit more about the series. So at the moment, we are 4.1 meter long electric octocopters. Now, these are beautiful flying machines that have been designed for performance and agility racing. Now, this year, you've had a look. You can't argue with it. And so that's part of the reason we're lucky to have DHL's logo on the vehicle as well. But it's kind of what they're capable of doing that's even more exciting. So these are vehicles that have been designed as opposed to the mainstream market, which are looking at taxis, where it's about energy efficiency. For us, we want to create dynamic and performance racing. So to do that, we need an incredibly powerful powertrain. It's got a greater power to weight ratio than a Porsche Taycan. We can get these vehicles, keep them in the air for 15 to 20 minutes, at which point they need to come in and have an electric pit stop where we switch the batteries over and out they go again. Now, in the future, as a lot of the market is looking towards something like hyperfast charging, we'd like to be able to do that too, and evolve with the market to be able to ensure that it's a platform that's relevant to drive new technologies as well. But the analogy I'll give as well is for where we're going and the kind of mentality of how we can feed back the performance technology to the eVTOL or UAM market is similar to something called the Schneider Trophy back in 1913. It's this amazing seaplane race. Happened in Monaco. It was the French, the Italians, the British, all racing against each other with these seaplanes, which were only 2 years after they were invented in 1913. And so within 18 years of racing, they went from 45 miles an hour to just shy of 400. And that is just evident of what a platform can do to be able to help drive the performance technology and the way that competition can drive innovation. So for us, it's about laying down a platform that the vehicles are able to race on. We're able to invite teams. Those teams are able to invest in those technologies. And by allowing the competition and the framework to take place to be able to create innovation, we truly believe that urban air mobility is going to be accelerated through sport.
I really like the phrase, this racing drives innovation, competition drives innovation. And when we were discussing, just try to compare a little bit more about Alice, the electric airplane that we expect in DHL launch in 2024. It has 440 nautical miles, which is equivalent to 100 kilometers per hour. Kilometers, and the speed is around the same that you were mentioning. It's 200 knots or 340 kilometers per hour. And also, you were mentioning about the charging. This electric airplane that we're talking about, it's for 26 pounds uplift, but it only requires 30 minutes battery hour in the air. So for every hour that is in the air. So how is the situation with Airspeeder? How much time do you need to charge the battery, or you just replace the batteries and put a new set of batteries? Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the races are only about 20 to 30 minutes, depending on where we race. And that means we can have something at the moment, which is called electric pit stops, which we've got down to 14 seconds, which I think is quite admirable. Yeah, it kind of puts us into Formula One standards somewhere at the 1960s mark. So we're not quite at Formula One today, but we're on our way. Now, we're doing battery swaps for the reason that we haven't quite got the hyperfast charging up to where we want it just yet. So we're going to be able to adapt the series to be able to accommodate for those new technologies when they become available and when they're able to serve a place. Because the race series is really there for not just entertainment purposes, but also for multiple technology developers to come in, test those technologies ahead of flying cars entering cities in 10 years' time. But yeah, to answer those questions, we've got 30-minute races, and we'd look to be able to expand that a little bit. At the moment, we think people's attention spans is still quite short, and we don't need to bore them just yet. So I think short and fast races should be good enough for us. But some of those stats you provided with the electric aircraft, they're brilliant, especially when you've got the advantage of a nice fixed wing to be able to offset some of that weight, and you can get a lot more range and distance on some of your craft there as well.
Jack, I would like to understand a bit more about what the partners and companies that you have been discussing with, what is their impression so far? What do they say about your technology and what you're doing, guys?
Well, I think the first question is the one that you probably had, Juan, which is, oh my God, flying car racing, this is amazing. I'm in. Secondly is, understand a little bit more about this future that's coming very quickly. So I mentioned before where we have 500 flying car companies or UAM companies that are already listed. There are some big names, especially from the automotive world, that have already started moving into this space. So companies like Toyota, who have invested just shy of a billion into a leading UAM unicorn called Joby. Hyundai, the CEO of Hyundai, only said a couple of weeks ago that we're going to have flying cars over our cities by 2030. Daimler, Aston, Porsche, General Motors, Fiat, they've all announced their flying car projects. So we're starting to see these automotive companies transition from we're on the ground to moving to the vertical space where mobility companies now. So it's great to see the markets moving in that direction. I think beyond the point of inevitability now. So now the rest of the market wants to understand what type of technology or infrastructure needs to be laid down in advance of that. And using Airspeeder, it's a great microcosm of cities of the future. It's a complete end-to-end example of some of the requirements you're going to need in flying in a city, but just on a racetrack. So although we fly remotely in beautiful locations over water, sea, snow, the sky's our playground, we utilize a whole suite of technologies, things like cybersecurity, data monitoring, rapid fast charging. It's all types of technologies that we'll need in the future in our cities that are just being tested in remote locations for racing.
Very interesting, Jack. And when you were mentioning this, what are those features that you see are in the short or maybe midterm transferable to a tangible solution in the mobility space, in the cities at least?
So some of those technologies that we see porting across, even coming across earlier, I'll talk about things like autonomous landing, for example. So autonomy is already starting to play its role out on the ground. We're seeing that in our streets, and it's being tested out. We're also looking for that in the air. Now, look, that's not necessarily per se going to be in our race series. It is piloted, and we're not going to let the machines fly these ones just for us yet. But there are elements where AI is included within the subset of what we're creating in the race series. So assisted control landing and collision avoidance as well. So where the vehicles can't physically bump each other, but they can digitally bump. So the ability for all the vehicles to be on a common network, such as a 5G infrastructure, another example of technology that we're working with some of our partners on, to be able to communicate with each other, relay a terabyte and terabytes of information, because these are sensor-laden vehicles, to be able to give actual state of where those vehicles are so accurately that the vehicles aren't able to hit each other. And that's a really important piece of technology that we started working on at the very beginning of this journey, with a vision of safe and exciting racing. Now, I think that's just another example of some technology that doesn't have to apply to just the air. We can take that to the ground. It can be evolved in a number of different kind of transport systems. But that's just one example. But that data monitoring, charging, renewable energies being used in the racing scenario, and that can also be showcased in cities. It's ripe for technology development.
Interesting. Jack, as you were speaking, I was wondering, what are the next races that you are guys planning to do and where? Could you share a little bit more about our audience?
I would love to announce them here and now with you, Juan. I can talk about the types of racing that we're doing. So we've just completed some races in Australia, which are test races. So we haven't publicly broadcast them yet, but we've done a few different styles. We've done a drag race. We're moving into pursuit and circuit racing. Okay. But the style of racing that we'll be doing for our international series, for the X series, we haven't announced the locations yet, but it will be global. So we'll have them in different parts of the world, with different environments and different backdrops, as you could imagine. As I said before, we're flying over grass, snow, water. We can race anywhere. We don't need to lay down the infrastructure that I guess more traditional motorsports requires. We use something like augmented reality sky tracks, where we don't need that infrastructure. We can literally set it up, leave the environment as we've seen it, and leave for another day to race in that location again. So yeah, it's quite exciting.
It is indeed. I mean, I'm just trying to compare the E1 Formula races with electric vehicles that we are also, sponsoring, and it's quite a little bit like challenging to move from F1, the traditional F1, with the E1 that you have the boom sound and it's excitement, with an E1 that it's muted. You don't hear anything. Is the same situation with Airspeeder? It's muted. Do you create any noise around it, or
Unfortunately, we're very loud. We're extraordinarily loud. We're electric, but we're loud. And this is great because I think for me, it's one of the most exciting parts of motorsports. Is really kind of lighting up all those sensors, and the audio is a key part of it. So for us, while our friends in the taxi side are working very hard to be able to reduce the noise that comes with electric mobility, and ensuring that when we fly over our cities that they're very quiet, we tend to go the other way. We are a motorsport, and we do believe that they've got an amazing sound to them as well. But you got to keep in mind, we are flying in remote locations. We're not racing over urban environments. So it should be a great experience.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm recalling last week I was in Washington and we were discussing with some congressmen about the challenges about it, because DHL needs to tackle that problem of the noise. And people was like, but how come electric is not supposed to be like this and that? So it's another challenge. It's like the batteries. Carrying the batteries is also a weight, a lost weight that you need to challenge on that. But the engineers are working on that, and I'm sure that's going to be tackled in the mid long term.
Yeah, they're getting there. They're getting quieter as well. Like you see some of the market leaders, like companies like Joby, for example, that have near quiet takeoff, which is absolutely brilliant. And this is only just with a couple of years of development. I have no doubt that by the time they're commercially operative over our cities, that they'll get those decibel levels right down. But yeah, it is a tough challenge. You are displacing air at the end of the day, which is a noisy exercise. And with batteries, in terms of their weight at the moment, they're coming down, but again, they're quite heavy.
Interesting. Jack, tell me more about that. How do you envision the challenges when you scale up? Because prototyping kind of is easy, but when you scale up the solution, that is where you encounter multiple challenges. Empowering those vehicles. You think that powering these type of prototypes or this type of solutions is going to be a challenge? Or how do you see that problem of powering these type of vehicles is going to be?
Yeah, there's a number of problems in our industry, in flying cars or UAM, urban air mobility. Some of the most common problems are things, or barriers, I guess, for some of the flying car companies are things like public acceptance, battery longevity, certification, regulation. These are just a couple that they have to kind of navigate. But they're doing it. They're pushing their way through the market, which is fantastic. So certification is great. They seem to be amassing to a very kind of common structure and shape, which will allow for an easier certification path. Noise levels, like I talked about before, they are coming down and getting down to an acceptable level, which is great. In terms of batteries, one or two of the OEMs in our space are looking at battery swapping, but most will be moving to hyperfast charging. So another problem with that in hand is skyports or urban air infrastructure, which needs to be set up, and that's taking its time, but it's getting there as well, with the vision of having these vehicles landing on rooftops with rapid charging and being able to switch over customers and then fly out again. The big one we think that's going to take a bit longer is regulation. So allowing bodies like the FAA to be able to allow these vehicles flying over urban environments, even though they are quite new. And the big one where we kind of see ourselves helping out the most is public acceptance. So we all want this future where flying cars can start to alleviate some of the congestion on our streets, and we can start going places where we've traditionally been blocked in using clean air technologies and renewable technologies to be able to do so. But it's a big gap between where we are today and where that future is. And we think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the early part, which is to get people excited about it, raise awareness about where flying car technology is at as a technology level, and start to move them into getting excited in it, so that you and I could hop on one of these vehicles ourselves one day.
I totally understand you, Jai, because DHL feels the same thing. But I mean, we are realistic, but also enthusiastic that all those challenges are going to be overcome. Because when you create this awareness that you were mentioning before, and the public acceptance, they're going to create a push to the governments, and that governments, I believe, from the perspective that we see, it's won through trust. If you win their trust with the safety that you were mentioning before, along with the performance, I think it's a right combination of factors to create, the legal frameworks around how to promote this. You have big players or big governments like China or US promoting this electrification and transition. And also, from the perspective that I see, Europe already lost the digitalization era or the economy of digitalization. Now, what they're trying to do is the sustainability competition to differentiate from the US. And I believe Europe is not, I mean, is not staying behind US or any other country in the Asia Pacific. So it's like the right combination of factors that I believe Airspeeder is going to be able to navigate with the coming years. I'm truly
Yeah.
excited about that type of innovation.
It's hugely exciting. It's both ways. I think the industry and government level in top down is working well, and it's getting there a lot quicker. But bottom up, let's get people wanting it. Let's get people screaming about it and saying, I want to hop in these vehicles. Let's make it happen. And racing did that. We've got to remember that's what motorsports was at the very beginning of the dawn of the automotive era. There were names like Enzo Ferrari, Marcel Renault, Charles Rolls. These are all names that we still remember today because they were racers and people fell in love with what they did and want to get the vehicles themselves. And so I think we're doing our part, but the industry is starting to now engage with the public and show them the benefits of what electric, clean air mobility future looks like.
Totally feel you. This is the reason why big players like DHL is behind this type of innovation and solutions. We truly support you. We want to see more innovation from you guys and hopefully start piloting with your technology. So again, this is a very good solution for the first last mile. We are not thinking about transatlantic solutions, right? This is mid short term or low short distances. So this is the reason why your technology is so attractive for DHL and probably any other player in the mobility arena, as you were mentioning, big OEMs like Toyota, Hyundai. They are believing that the model needs to transform. Daimler as well. So this is how I believe the Ubers and all Lyfts and all these technology companies are in this ecosystem, trying to bring more and more players into the arena. And I believe Airspeeder is one of those. So really, really excited to have this conversation with you, Jack. Is there anything else that you would like to mention to the audience today?
No, Juan, it just sounds fantastic, and I just need to know when we can start getting you a seat and getting you trained up and ready to enter the series.
Excellent, Jack. So thank you everybody for joining us in this conversation. We hopefully believe that this is, we truly believe actually that Airspeeder is one of those players that is going to give us more news, exciting news, and hopefully to see you in the air, Jack.
We'll see you there with us. Thanks, Juan.
Thank you, guys.